Hello, and welcome to Lawless Conversations with Katie. I'm Katie, your host. This podcast goes through various difficult subjects such as abortion, gun control, prison systems, or gender, to name a few, and dives into all different aspects of the arguments that might be offered or discussed. At the moment, we are wading our way through the subject of abortion, and today we're going to talk about government assistance as it pertains to abortion. Although I have spent a lot of time and effort into researching these topics, I am by no means an expert on this subject or any other subject I will explore in the future. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt, and of course, if you have any questions or things to add, please share them. I try my best to keep my own biases out of these explorations, and because I'm talking about many aspects of a subject, including opposing ideas and arguments, know that these are not necessarily ideas that I subscribe to or hold personally. I will, however, explore different arguments as if I do believe in them in order to truly explore all facets of this subject. Finally, because these are difficult subjects, there will be some content that is hard to hear and might be triggering. Please understand I am not looking to insult anyone, but to explore these subjects openly and honestly. I don't want to convince anyone to think like me. I want to convince people to think, period. So without further ado, come have a lawless conversation with me. There are those who would have no problem with women having the choice to get an abortion, but do not want any government services to be involved with it. For example, at the moment, there is government assistance available and funneled into services like Planned Parenthood that would make it easier for women of lower incomes to obtain an abortion, among other health-related things. Thus, taking the government funding away would put the choice solely on the woman, or the couple in some cases, in all ways, including financially. This solution offers people a way to wash their hands of it, saying almost, you do what you want, but I don't want to pay for it. This can make perfect sense, but there are some questions. For instance, if this is your mindset when it comes to abortion, do you see all government assistance in the medical arena as equal? Is it your desire that all medical issues be taken on by the individual or just abortion? To this, I imagine some would say that abortion involves one's mistake, or quote-unquote mistake, and that is why it should not be taken on by the state or funded by taxpayers' money. Does that also extend to diseases that would need to be treated due to alcohol, drug, or food addictions? Should the government only fund services for people whose conditions are genetic? But if one goes that route, would not the parents who chose to have a child, knowing the family medical history and the likelihood of those medical issues being passed on, be held responsible for caring for a child who had developed a genetic issue that they knew was likely to come about? Obviously, the world is not a fair place, so these questions, while valid, are not likely to be considered, except by philosophical individuals like myself, who simply want to dive into semantics. But that is a huge problem with these kind of discussions. There is so much involved. There are so many strands of connection in this web of the abortion discussion that staying away from semantics becomes counterproductive to settling the issue or creating laws about abortion. It doesn't make sense to say if government assistance is taken away for abortion, then government assistance should not be involved in any medical support at all. But since there are likely people who would say that, let's explore it. The far end of this thought is taking government out of subsidizing any medical bills or procedures. America does not have a universal healthcare system or a single-payer system in place. But the closest programs we have set up are Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. These programs are not set up to support every taxpayer, but they cover a great many. The prices of insurance are not something low-income earners can afford at their salaries. Thus, taking away all government assistance in the medical arena would result in people losing access to much-needed healthcare services. Some might say that this would encourage a more communal connection where one's family, friends, neighbors, churches, or religious groups, and communities in general would begin to pick up the slack and support one another. While this is a beautiful idea, it is unrealistic. It's likely that these communities of support would eventually have to create some system for determining who needs assistance more readily and how to deal with those who abuse such charity. This in turn would lead right back to a social or governing level of healthcare and back to the same issues we face now. In this model as well, the services or likelihood of someone receiving help or services might possibly be based on a particular person's or group's ethical or moral standards, rather than need. This could lead to discrimination and further division among communities and the U.S. as a whole, as some people are helped because they hold, let's say, a particular religious stance, while others are turned away because they hold a different religious belief or system. Along that same thought, if government assistance is taken away for abortions, then assistance after the child is born would also have to be taken away, along with adoption services. If one is viewing abortion through the mindset of, you do what you want, but I'm not paying for it, then that would have to extend to those who have a child, but cannot afford it. If one assistance is taken away and not the other, there is a clear bias towards those who choose, quote-unquote, the right thing, which then means government assistance is granted based on one's belief, which is fickle and never changing, depending on who is in power, rather than actual need. While some possible advantages could be created by taking government assistance for abortion away, there are far too many connecting questions that need to be addressed. Obviously, the world is not a fair place, but there needs to be some semblance or strive to create a more equal set of rules than just abortion no longer being funded by the government, but everything else is fine. If these questions are not considered, it would appear to the common person that abortion laws would be made to punish or put burdens on women in general and take certain choices away just for a select group while supporting other groups. This is not how laws work in the U.S. and would be unacceptable as a solution to the abortion issue due to ethical problems. The subject has quite a few questions and I'm excited about them. If government assistance were not available to women who are single mothers, do you think there would be an uptick in abortions or an uptick in people on birth control or both? Secondly, does government assistance for single mothers facilitate men not having to really take responsibility for their actions or children? Does it facilitate women not having to take personal responsibility for their actions or children? And lastly, if abortion is banned, should government assistance be banned? Should the choice of adoption be banned as well? Share your thoughts. If you are interested in commenting about this episode or answering any of the questions I just asked, you are welcome to. You can either send me an email at lawlessconversations@yahoo.com. That is LAWLESSCONVERSATIONS@yahoo.com. You can also comment on Twitter at Lawless Convos, LAWLESSCONVOS. Finally, you can also contact me on Facebook if you just look for Lawless Conversations, 2 different words, LAWLESSCONVERSATIONS. I look forward to hearing from you. The references to any sources that I use in each episode will be available in the bio, along with all of these social media connections. Join me next Wednesday as I dive into the funding of Planned Parenthood, how much comes from the government and how much comes from other sources, and also some articles in relation to what all Planned Parenthood actually is involved in and what they do for the most part. Thank you for joining me for this episode. I look forward to next week.